I will defend her.
The courtroom fell silent the moment James Patrick spoke. Not because of what he said, though "I'll defend her" would echo through legal circles for years, but because of who was saying it. The man with the mop, the ghost in the corner, the janitor who'd spent 16 years making sure no one remembered his name. Kim Greene looked up from the defense table, her attorneys long gone, and her eyes went wide. Not with confusion, with terror. Because she recognized him, and worse, so did the billionaire sitting across the room. Tommy Blaine's smile vanished like smoke, and for the first time in his life, the most powerful man in the state looked afraid. What happens when a janitor with a mop becomes the only thing standing between a billionaire and his next victim? You're about to witness a confrontation 16 years in the making, one that will expose the darkest corners of power and the lengths one man will go to bury his past. Before we dive in, hit subscribe, tap the like button, and drop your location in the comments. Your support helps us bring more untold stories of courage against corruption to light. Now let's discover what pushed a man who lost everything to step back into the one place that destroyed him. The judge stared at James over her reading glasses, her expression hovering somewhere between disbelief and irritation. "Sir, I don't know what you think this is, but—" "Your Honor," James interrupted, his voice steady now, the tremor gone. "I'm not claiming to be her attorney. Not yet. But I am claiming the right to speak on irregularities I've observed in the evidence presented against Ms. Greene." Judge Miranda Chen's eyebrows rose. "Irregularities? You're She glanced at his uniform. "Maintenance worker." "I am," James said. "Which means I've been in this courthouse longer than most of the attorneys in this room. And I've seen enough cases to recognize when something doesn't add up." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Reporters leaned forward. Tommy Blaine sat motionless, his face carved from stone. Judge Chen studied James for a long moment, then sighed. "You have 2 minutes. Make them count." 16 years ago, James Patrick had been the kind of investigator prosecutors dreamed of having on their team. He'd started with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division at 26, moved to federal prosecution by 30, and by 32 had dismantled 3 major corporate fraud operations that others had called untouchable. His reputation wasn't built on charm or theatrics. It was built on an almost supernatural ability to see patterns in financial data that others missed. A misplaced decimal, a timestamp that didn't quite align, a signature that appeared twice in places it shouldn't. He was relentless, methodical, and he never, ever lost. Until Tommy Blaine. James had been deep into an investigation of Blaine Development Corporation when he found it. A money laundering pipeline so sophisticated it had been running for nearly a decade, hidden behind shell companies, charitable foundations, and real estate transactions that looked completely legitimate on the surface. Millions of dollars flowing through construction projects that existed only on paper, tax shelters disguised as community development, and at the center of it all, Tommy Blaine, smiling for cameras while bleeding the system dry. James had been weeks away from filing charges when the counterattack came. It started with whispers, then accusations, then a formal hearing where James was accused of leaking confidential files to a journalist, files that mysteriously appeared with his digital fingerprints all over them. The evidence was flawless, too flawless, but nobody cared about nuance when a federal investigator was accused of corruption. The hearing lasted 4 hours. His career ended in 15 minutes. His credentials were revoked. His cases were reassigned. His name became shorthand for the investigator who went dirty. And his partner, Sarah, the woman he'd planned to marry, the mother of his daughter, couldn't withstand the pressure. The threats, the surveillance, the reporters camped outside their home. She took Elena and disappeared into witness protection under a program James had helped design, a bitter irony he'd never stopped tasting. "Stay away," she'd told him. "If you love us, stay away." So he did. He became a ghost, a janitor, a man so invisible that even Tommy Blaine would forget he existed. Until today. James stepped closer to the defense table, his maintenance uniform a jarring contrast to the sea of expensive suits around him. He picked up one of the scattered documents from Kim's folder. "This bank statement," he said, holding it up for the judge to see. "It shows a transfer of $47,000 from the charity account to Ms. Greene's personal account on March 15th at 2:34 p.m. "Exactly," Rothwell, Blaine's attorney, sneered. "Thank you for making our case for us." "Except," James continued, ignoring him, "this statement was generated by First Regional Bank's system, and First Regional's transaction timestamps are always recorded in UTC format, then converted to local time for display." He set the paper down and picked up another. "This timestamp shows Eastern Standard Time, not Eastern Daylight Time. March 15th falls within daylight savings. The timestamp is off by 1 hour." The room went silent. "Furthermore," James said, his voice gaining momentum, "the transaction ID format changed in January of this year when First Regional updated their core banking system. This transaction uses the old format, a format that hasn't existed for 3 months." Judge Chen leaned forward. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying this document was fabricated using old templates," James said, "and whoever created it didn't know enough about banking systems to get the technical details right." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Kim's head snapped up, tears still streaming down her face, but now mixed with something else, hope. Rothwell shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is absurd. This man has no credentials, no standing, no—" "He has eyes," Judge Chen cut him off sharply, "and apparently more attention to detail than your entire legal team." She turned to her clerk. "I want that document verified by an independent forensic accountant. Now." Tommy Blaine's knuckles were white against the armrest. During the recess, Kim grabbed James's arm the moment they were alone in the corridor outside the courtroom. "You're him," she whispered urgently. "Senior Investigator Patrick. I met you 8 years ago. You consulted on the Riverside Community Project when we were investigating grant fraud." James went still. "You remember that?" "You saved that entire program," Kim said, her voice shaking. "You found the embezzlement trail in 3 days when everyone else had given up. I never forgot your name." Her eyes searched his face. "What happened to you?" "Tommy Blaine happened," James said quietly. Kim's expression hardened with understanding. "The land deal. He wanted the non-profit's property for his waterfront development. When I refused to sign the transfer, She trailed off, the pieces falling into place. "He did this. He manufactured this entire case just to destroy me." "Just like he destroyed me," James confirmed. "The evidence against you isn't just suspicious, it's surgically precise. Built for headlines, not for court. He never intended this to go to trial. He wanted you broken before it even began." Kim's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and paled. "My mother. She's asking if I'm going to prison." "Not if I can help it," James said. His own phone vibrated. "Unknown number." He opened the message. "Heard you surfaced. If you're facing Blaine again, be careful. He doesn't lose twice. MC Mitchell Carver, his former partner at the Bureau, one of the few people who'd believed James was framed. James's hands trembled as he pocketed the phone. Not from fear. From the weight of a war he'd thought was over, suddenly roaring back to life. When the hearing reconvened, Rothwell was waiting like a coiled snake. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "before we continue, I'd like to address the colorful allegations made by—" He glanced at James with undisguised contempt. "The maintenance staff. Mr. Patrick, is it?" James said nothing. "Tell me, Mr. Patrick," Rothwell continued, pacing theatrically, "what are your qualifications to analyze complex financial documents? Did you study banking forensics during your janitorial training?" Laughter rippled through the gallery. James remained motionless. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but cut through the room like a scalpel. "I studied financial forensics at Georgetown. Graduated top of my class. Spent 12 years with federal prosecution, specializing in corporate fraud and money laundering. I've testified as an expert witness in 47 cases, with a conviction rate of 96%. He paused. "And I spent 6 months investigating Tommy Blaine's development empire before he had me destroyed to protect himself." The courtroom went dead silent. Rothwell's face drained of color. And Tommy Blaine, for the first time in 16 years, looked directly at James Patrick with the full recognition of a man staring at a ghost he thought he'd buried. Judge Chen's voice was ice. "Counselor Rothwell, I'm ordering a complete forensic review of all financial evidence in this case. We reconvene in 3 days." She slammed the gavel. As the courtroom erupted, James heard it, barely a whisper, but unmistakable. Tommy Blaine, leaning toward his attorney, his perfect composure finally cracking. "You should have stayed buried." James turned and looked directly at him, and for the first time in 16 years, James Patrick smiled. Not a friendly smile, a promise. 3 days later, the courthouse was a madhouse. News vans lined the street. Reporters jostled for position on the steps. Headlines screamed from every phone screen. "Janitor exposes billionaire's fraud," and "Disgraced investigator returns to destroy tycoon." James arrived at 5 a.m., just like always. Same uniform, same thermos of coffee, same maintenance cart. But this time, when he pushed through the courthouse doors, people noticed. Whispers followed him down the hallway. Photographers tried to get shots through the windows. He ignored all of it. In a small conference room on the second floor, Kim sat waiting for him, her hands wrapped around a styrofoam cup of tea that had long gone cold. "I didn't sleep," she said, when James entered. Her eyes were red-rimmed but focused. "I kept thinking, what if the forensic accountant doesn't find what you found? What if Blaine's team covered it better than we think? What if—" "Kim!" James set his cart aside and sat across from her. "What's really going on?" She was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I never expected anyone to save me." James said nothing, just waited. "When my lawyers walked out," Kim continued, her hands shaking, "I thought that was it. The end. I'd lose everything. My job, my reputation, my freedom. And there was nothing I could do to stop it." Tears welled in her eyes. "I knew who you were the second you spoke. I recognized your voice from that consultation 8 years ago. And for one insane second I thought, maybe he'll help." She looked up at James, her expression raw. "But then I remembered what happened to you, how Blaine destroyed you, and I realized you had every reason to stay silent, to stay invisible, to let me drown the same way you almost did. Her voice cracked. "Why didn't you?" James was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 16 years. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone in that courtroom," he said. "To watch everyone walk away. To realize the system you believed in has decided you're not worth saving." He met her eyes. "And I will not let Tommy Blaine ruin another innocent life. Not while I'm still breathing." Kim covered her mouth with her hand, fresh tears streaming down her face. "I promise you," James said quietly. "This ends differently." The courtroom was packed when Judge Chen called the hearing to order. The forensic accountant's report sat on her desk like a loaded weapon. "Mr. Rothwell," the judge said, her tone clipped. "I've reviewed the independent analysis. I'd like to hear from your expert witness now. Dr. Gerald Hammond, I believe." Dr. Hammond, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s with silver hair and an expensive suit, took the stand with the confidence of someone who'd testified in 100 cases and never been challenged. That confidence lasted approximately 4 minutes. "Dr. Hammond," James said, standing from the defense table with a single sheet of paper in his hand. "You testified that the financial transactions in question were consistent with standard banking procedures, correct?" "That's correct." "And you verified the timestamps yourself?" "I did." "Using what methodology?" Hammond blinked. I reviewed the bank statements provided by the prosecution." "Did you contact First Regional Bank directly to verify the transaction logs?" A pause. "That wasn't necessary. The statements were certified." "Certified by whom?" I assume by the bank." "You assume." James stepped closer. "Dr. Hammond, do you know what UTC timestamp conversion is?" Hammond's confidence wavered. "Of course. Universal Time Coordinate." "Then you know that First Regional Bank's system automatically converts all timestamps from UTC to local time, accounting for daylight savings." James held up the paper. "This is a direct statement from First Regional's IT director, obtained this morning. It confirms that the transaction ID format changed in January, and that no transactions using the old format have been processed since December." Hammond's face paled. "You testified under oath that these documents were authentic," James continued, his voice surgical. "But you never verified them. You never contacted the bank. You never checked the metadata." He paused. "How much did Tommy Blaine pay you for your expert opinion, Dr. Hammond?" That's not $300,000. James set another document on the witness stand. "Paid through a consulting LLC that Mr. Blaine controls. A payment made 2 weeks before Ms. Greene was even charged." The courtroom exploded. Reporters surged forward. Judge Chen's gavel cracked like gunfire. Hammond's mouth opened and closed silently. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His hands gripped the witness stand so hard his knuckles turned white. "Dr. Hammond," Judge Chen said coldly, "answer the question." I was told the documents were verified. I was told..." He broke off, his voice collapsing into a stammer. I never checked." He slumped in the chair, defeated. The courtroom was chaos, and then Tommy Blaine stood up. "Enough!" he roared. Every head turned. Cameras swiveled. The room went silent so fast it felt like the air had been sucked out. "This is a circus." Blaine's face was flushed, his perfect composure shattered. He pointed at James with a trembling finger. "You're listening to a disgraced investigator, a fraud, a nobody who was kicked out of federal service for corruption." Judge Chen's voice cut through like ice. "Mr. Blaine, sit down. He's trying to destroy me because I exposed him 16 years ago." Blaine was shouting now, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "He leaked classified files. He violated every oath he ever took. And now he's standing in this courtroom pretending to be some kind of hero. The silence that followed was absolute. Blaine seemed to realize, too late, what he'd just done. His attorney grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. But the damage was complete. James didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at Blaine with an expression that could have cut glass. Judge Chen's voice was dangerously quiet. "Mr. Blaine, sit down." Blaine collapsed into his seat, his face ashen. James walked slowly to the center of the courtroom. In his hand was a single manila folder, creased and worn. He'd been carrying it in his maintenance cart for 3 days, waiting for the right moment. "Your Honor," he said, "I'd like to submit one final piece of evidence." He opened the folder and removed a printout, a digital log with lines of code and timestamps highlighted in yellow. "This is a server log from a computer in Tommy Blaine's corporate office," James said. "I found it 3 weeks ago while emptying a trash bin after hours. It had been printed and discarded, but not shredded." He laid it on Judge Chen's desk. "This log shows that the fraudulent bank documents entered into evidence against Ms. Greene were created on Mr. Blaine's private network. It includes the digital fingerprints of the software used, the exact timestamps of file creation, and the user credentials of the person who created them." He paused. "A member of Mr. Blaine's legal team." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Chen picked up the document, her expression unreadable. She read it once, twice, then looked up at Blaine's attorneys with something close to fury. "Bailiff," she said quietly, "detain Mr. Rothwell and his associates for questioning, and someone get the district attorney on the phone. Now." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled for the doors. Cameras flashed like strobe lights. Blaine's attorneys rose, shouting objections, but security was already moving toward them. And Tommy Blaine, billionaire, mogul, untouchable, sat frozen in his seat, his face the color of chalk, cornered for the first time in his life. Kim covered her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. Judge Chen stood, her gavel raised, and the room fell silent. "This hearing is suspended pending a full criminal investigation into evidence tampering, witness bribery, and conspiracy to commit fraud." Her eyes swept the courtroom. "Ms. Greene, all charges against you are dismissed effective immediately," Kim gasped, her body sagging with relief. The judge turned to James, and for the first time, something that might have been respect flickered in her expression. "Mr. Patrick," she said slowly, "do you intend to represent Miss Greene formally? Because if you're planning to pursue a civil suit against Mr. Blaine for defamation and malicious prosecution," she paused, "I suspect you'll have no trouble finding a courtroom." James looked at Kim, then at Tommy Blaine, who was staring at him with naked fear. "I already am," James said quietly. The cameras flashed. The reporters shouted questions. And Kim Greene, her voice shaking but full of gratitude, whispered, "Thank you." James looked at her, really looked at her, and then turned back to Tommy Blaine. "I told you," he said, his voice carrying across the courtroom like a promise carved in stone. "I'll defend her." The system, long untouched, began to crack, and the ghost Tommy Blaine tried to erase stood in the center of it all, finally visible again. But before everything began to unravel, what do you think made James, someone who had spent 16 years perfecting invisibility, finally decide to be seen by the exact people he'd been hiding from? The morning sun of early autumn filtered through the tall windows of Carrington City Courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished floors that James Patrick had just finished mopping. 5:30 a.m., just like every morning for the past 16 years. He was always the first one there, a 48-year-old man with graying temples and quiet hazel eyes, dressed in a faded maintenance uniform with Carrington Facilities stitched above the pocket in block letters. His studio apartment on the east side of town was still dark when he left at 4:45 a.m. The room held only a narrow bed, a hot plate, and a single shelf lined with books he never had time to read. On the nightstand sat one photo, his daughter, Elena, at age 7, laughing on a swing set. She was 23 now, living 2 states away under her mother's married name. They hadn't spoken in years. James had made sure of that. Safer that way. He didn't turn on lights when he left in the morning. Electric bills ran high, and with a salary of $2,100 a month, every dollar mattered. Breakfast was black coffee from a thermos and whatever day-old pastries the courthouse cafeteria set aside for maintenance staff, a small mercy he never took for granted. That morning, as James pushed his cleaning cart down the 3rd-floor corridor, he paused outside courtroom 6. The biggest cases always ended up here, and today was no exception. The case against Kim Greene, the woman accused of embezzling from billionaire Tommy Blaine's children's charity fund, was set to begin. He hadn't learned about it from the news. James didn't own a television. He'd learned it from the nights he spent cleaning that very courtroom, from the whispered strategy sessions between Blaine's attorneys, from the documents carelessly left on tables when they thought no one important was watching. To them, the janitor was furniture, invisible, unimportant, not worth a second glance. But James Patrick hadn't always been invisible. 16 years ago, he had been Senior Federal Investigator James Patrick, one of the most feared names in corporate crime prosecution. He'd had an office with his name on the door, a team of analysts who trusted his instincts, and a case file that was about to bring down one of the state's most powerful men, until everything collapsed in a single, brutal hearing that stripped away his credentials, his reputation, and his future. He shoved the memories down. That life was gone. Now he mopped floors, emptied trash, and kept his head low. An honest job that kept a roof over his head and occasionally allowed him to send money to Elena's college fund through an anonymous account. She never knew where it came from. That was the point. As James turned to leave the courtroom, his phone buzzed, a text from his supervisor. Patrick, courtroom 6 needs another pass. VIP hearing today. Make it spotless. James exhaled slowly. VIP meant scrutiny, inspections, and 100 ways to be blamed for things that weren't his fault. But as always, he didn't complain. By 9:00 a.m., the courtroom was packed. Reporters crammed into the back rows. Photographers jostled for position. Keyboards clattered like nervous insects. At the defense table, Kim Greene sat completely alone. She was 34, but looked as if she'd aged a decade overnight. Her hands trembled as she clutched a folder, her dark eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal searching for an exit that didn't exist. James stood in the far corner, mop in hand, watching. He'd learned to read people in his former life. The tilt of a head, the rhythm of breathing, the way hands moved when someone was lying or terrified or both. Kim wasn't just scared, she was drowning. And then, at 9:17 a.m., everything changed. Blaine's lead attorney, Marcus Rothwell, a man whose tailored suits cost more than James made in 6 months, stood up, buttoned his jacket with theatrical precision, and made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the room. Your Honor, due to an irreconcilable breakdown in attorney-client relations, we are withdrawing from this case, effective immediately. The courtroom erupted. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment. Kim's folder slipped from her hands and scattered across the table, papers fluttering to the ground like wounded birds. She collapsed forward, her shoulders shaking, her breath coming in short, desperate gasps. Across the aisle, Tommy Blaine sat in the front row, immaculate in a charcoal suit, his expression one of carefully, controlled satisfaction. This was the end game. This was how he won, not in court, but before the trial even began. Destroy the defense, isolate the victim, and watch them crumble under the weight of their own helplessness. James had seen this before. He'd seen Blaine destroy people with this exact strategy. He'd cleaned these floors after those cases ended, swept away the debris of shattered lives, and said nothing. Because silence was survival. But Kim Greene's face, pale, trembling, abandoned, looked exactly like his own had 16 years ago, when Blaine's lawyers tore his life apart in this very building. And something inside James Patrick, something he'd buried so deep he thought it was dead, suddenly roared back to life. He set the mop against the wall. The courtroom was chaos, reporters shouting questions, the judge demanding order, Kim sobbing quietly into her hands. No one noticed the janitor moving forward. No one ever noticed James Patrick, until he reached the defense table, placed one calloused hand on the polished wood, and spoke in a voice that cut through the noise like a blade. "Your Honor, I'll defend her." The room went silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from shock, but the kind that comes from disbelief, so complete it physically stuns people. Heads turned, cameras swiveled. The judge froze mid-sentence, gavel suspended in the air. And Kim Greene, through her tears, lifted her head and looked directly at James Patrick. Her eyes went wide, not with confusion, not with gratitude, with something far more dangerous, recognition. She knew. And across the aisle, Tommy Blaine, who'd been smiling just seconds before, went rigid in his seat. His perfectly composed expression cracked, his eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched, because he knew too. The man standing at that defense table wasn't just a janitor. He was the ghost Tommy Blaine had spent millions of dollars and 16 years trying to erase. And now James Patrick was standing in the one place Tommy thought he'd never see him again, between him and his next victim. The judge's voice finally broke the silence, sharp with irritation. "Excuse me? Who are you?" James didn't take his eyes off Tommy Blaine. "Someone who knows exactly how this case was built," James said quietly, "and exactly how to tear it apart." That was the moment the entire courthouse realized that something far bigger than a simple fraud case was about to explode. Because the janitor who'd spent 16 years invisible had just stepped into the light. And he'd brought 16 years of buried evidence, suppressed rage, and unfinished justice with him. To understand why James Patrick's 5 words shattered that courtroom, you need to understand who he used to be. And more importantly, what Tommy Blaine did to destroy him. Because 16 years ago, James Patrick wasn't pushing a mop. He was closing in on the biggest corruption case in state history. And Tommy Blaine was about to be exposed, until James became the target instead.